Credits will be automatically reported to the AIA for those in attendance for the full hour session. Attendance will be reported within 10 business days, and a certificate of completion will be provided to you. For today's webinar, we have some learning objectives, which are to identify and implement efficiency-boosting technological tools and software to automate routine tasks and streamline workflows in your firm, to delegate non-core tasks and apply time management techniques to maximize productivity and focus on high-value activities, to adopt project management processes that enhance the efficiency and implement strategies to improve client communication, and finally, to integrate the principles of the 4-hour work week to create a healthier work-life balance, reduce stress, and increase overall job satisfaction. Thank you for choosing to attend this webinar. Now, I would like to introduce our presenters, Steve Burns, founder and president of the Well-Designed Firm.
Okay, thank you, Sean, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining me today. I do have, I think, a lot to cover, and I'm going to be leaving sufficient time for the Q&A. If any of you have attended other webinars of mine, I often do run long, and I don't often have enough time, so I've tried to make this one brief enough so we would have enough time. Before I do begin, let me just indulge me for a moment while I explain why I'm actually presenting this to you today. So it was almost a year and a half ago, after I sold my third company, that I decided that this next chapter in my life really involved sharing as much as I could possibly could of all that I'd learned now over 4 decades in the AE industry, both as a practicing architect, but also as a software entrepreneur, where we were serving over 4,000 AE firms. And it's frankly in that capacity in the software industry that where I've been engaging personally with over 1,400 firm owners that I have learned most of the incredible things that I would like to share, much more than in fact that I learned during my first 20 years in practice. So as a business coach now, I work directly with the firm owners and some of their key staff. And I have become acutely aware that a lot of firms are just not able to cross this chasm, finding that balance between serving their clients, but also building a sustainable and a valuable business, a business that's not just there merely to serve the owner's lifestyle, but a firm that could actually have some lasting value, maybe even help establish a legacy. And if any of you are interested in learning more about how to make your business as, like I like to say, as elegant as your architecture, I invite you to please visit me at thewelldesignedfirm.com. Not now, do it, later after the webinar. You can also sign up for a free 30-minute meeting with me. We can just see if there's what's going on with your office and help hopefully bring some value to your firm, maybe coach you into achieving your business and your personal life goals. So my objective today is going to actually be twofold. I'm going to share some of my thoughts regarding ways to reduce your workload and spend more time doing what you love. After that, I'm also going to ask you to please sign up for a demo to learn about the technology solution that is offered by today's sponsor, BQE Software, which I know firsthand has magnificent tools that will enable you to achieve that goal that you have of finding total joy in your profession and achieving that life-work balance that we should all enjoy. Okay, so I think it's something like 17 years ago, Tim Ferriss wrote the 4-Hour Workweek. It's a great title. Not surprisingly, it was received both with skepticism and enthusiasm. Regardless, the book did spend over 4 years on the New York Times bestseller list. It sold over 2 million copies worldwide. It was also translated into 40 or more than 40 languages. So the notion of working much less appeals to everyone. And the fact that you are actually in attendance today, I think it also resonates with you. Pardon me. Now, perhaps some of you have also read the book. Self-help books can be inspiring or momentarily inspiring, and motivational speakers could be captivating and stimulating. The problem is always taking the lessons learned and then implementing change in our lives so we can do better or we can be better. Now, I do understand that change is very hard. The webinar I gave previously was really about building atomic habits, small things you can do to, small things you can do in your life to make those habits become a part of your routine. Um, Building habits are necessary to enact change. So you're going to need to modify your behavior so that some of these new good habits can take root. And then the ideas that we take away from the webinar, or the goals that you're hoping to achieve, can become manifest. I'm going to admit that during today's presentation, I will not give you a recipe to suddenly alter your life so that you can go play 2 rounds of golf every day, maybe call into the office occasionally just to check in. Actually, I am not sure that any of you in attendance really want to do that either. I just hope to demonstrate that by changing your habits, your work processes, how you even think about your firm, then you can be freed up from feeling like you are drowning in work or occupied with the kinds of work that you don't enjoy. So I guess indulge me for another moment to, I don't know if this is what they call a humble brag, I'm not sure, but much to my wife's dismay, I can actually be found in front of a computer 4 to 8 hours a day, but only a fraction of my time is actually spent doing the quote unquote work. I'll talk more about this when we get to the section, how do you fill your void when 90% of the work week is eliminated? Now, the artwork that you see on Tim's book, it shows there's a person hanging on a hammock suspended between 2 palm trees. And I think, as we're going to discuss soon, I don't think that is what any of you are here to would like to do if you were given 36 extra hours for the week. It's not that you're going to put it to waste like that. I recently was listening to a podcast about a new movement. It is actually attracting a lot of the Gen Z cohort. I don't know if any of you are attending here today. It's called FIRE, which stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And that is not what we're actually talking about today. Whether or not that's a movement that's directed at non-professionals, I'm not certain, but I think most of you are all highly educated people who love practicing your profession. You're not looking to retire as much as to just fill your days with the joy that you always imagined that your craft would provide. However, as soon as this craft became real, as soon as it became a business, at least a business that you were responsible for, all the joy is sucked out. After all, you are now responsible for keeping a business operating, paying your bills and your employees, scavenging for another project to feed the beast. And as the adult in the room, you hardly have time to participate in the creative enterprise, to do the things that inspired you to join the profession in the first place. So where you might once have said, like, I need more time, or I wish we had more hours in the day, I'm hoping we could flip that upside down, reorient ourselves with what actually constitutes work, how that work gets done, maybe even how you perceive time. And the hope is that we will have plenty of time to play again. Now, Tim Ferriss defines 4 main areas where you need to really put your attention to when you're trying to achieve a 4-hour work week. And they're at the bottom of the slide there. They are definition, elimination, automation, and then finally liberation. We're going to have to spend a few minutes delving into the meaning of each of these. But once you are able to define what you want out of life, what constitutes work, that's when you can start the process of elimination, getting rid of all the things that do not fit into that definition, even when those things are essential for the business. After that, we're going to examine how automation is crucial to realizing the 4-hour work week. Once you implement automation, once you and I will talk about that really as a technology, you're going to be liberated to pursue your goals. So the automation will lead to the liberation. So let's see, before we get right into the definition, I just want to explain the obvious. I hope it's the obvious, which is why do you need this work-life balance? And to do this, I will speak from a personal experience. After I completed my graduate studies, I went to Chicago to, let's just say I went to work for a preeminent international architectural firm, and I was working 90-hour weeks. It was one of the happiest times in my life. This is actually not uncommon when you are young and single, and frankly, you're grateful that you finally completed your academic studies and you can finally, dive into the pool and go swimming while you're getting paid good money to do what you used to have to pay money to do when you were, in school. There's tuition. So I was very fortunate. I had the luxury of working for a firm that at that time had 50 years of experience. They had developed phenomenal processes, and they provided some really meaningful mentorship to me. And that enabled me to continue learning about this new profession of mine while making my work joyful, even though it was an overabundance of work. And I know not all of us are as lucky, but that's what the first 7 years of my young professional life looked like. When some of my family members were acting very concerned about my 90-hour work weeks, and they said that this is just not a sustainable lifestyle, that be careful, you're going to burn out, I would frankly just laugh in their faces. I remember going home reluctantly at 11 p.m. most nights. Burnout was not on my radar. I was kind of like the kid whose parents would have to come physically drag them in from the playground into the house for dinner every single night. However, everything changed once I was married and I was preparing to start a family, and I had survived an incredible wave of layoffs after the October stock market collapse back in 1987. And I realized that I might not be so lucky in the future. So my wife and I had, an important discussion. We decided that if I wanted to control my future, I really had to start my own firm. Unfortunately, I was not smart enough to know what I know today. So like many before me, I simply opened an office. Within a year, we had 5 employees. We were bringing more people on as quickly as possible. Times were good. I guess that's the good side of the story. But guess what? I hated my life. I was not having fun anymore. To me, owning a firm and being responsible for a business and clients, it sucked all the joy out of being an architect. You must be honest about what defines a happy, fulfilling life. Once I stopped and I did that exercise, almost 2 decades before Tim Ferriss even wrote that book. It's not like he had that novel concept of introspection here, but when I did the exercise of what would give me joy, I really completed the first requirement for attempting this 4-hour work week. I had a very clear picture of what work I wanted to do, to achieve personal happiness. And better yet, what work I had been doing that did not bring personal happiness, but it was still necessary for the sustainability of the business. Okay, I finished that first step. I was on my way to regaining control, which leads to that next step of elimination. And before I take you to that, we are going to have just 2 poll questions today, just to make sure, check your pulse, make sure you're all still here and paying attention. But the first poll question is, how many hours a week do you work on average? Okay, so are you finding yourself working less than 24 hours a week? Are you working less than 40? Are you probably 40 to 50 hour work weeks? Do you find yourself putting in 50 to 60 hours a week? Or are you working more than 60 hours a week? So let's, keep that poll question up for just a moment, and we're going to share the results with you so you could see what the rest of today's attendees' lives are like at the office. So I am viewing the poll results. Okay, so what we see is 61% of you are working 40 hours to 50 hours, the traditional work week that we've known about for decades. About 3% of you are on the bottom end of just less than 24 hours. 2% of you are working more than 60 hours. And 25% of you do actually work less than 40-hour weeks. So somewhere around 28% work less than a 40-hour week, and just a very small percentage of you are working greater than that. So good to know, and thank you for filling out that little poll question. Okay, so we've done the definition. Now we're going to move on to elimination, removing unnecessary tasks and distractions that are not contributing to the goals that you defined in that previous step. Now, Tim advocates for a concept that I've talked about on numerous webinars before, which is the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule. And if you're not familiar with it, it basically states that 80% of all of those great results actually come from a mere 20% of our efforts. So suppose that you can identify and eliminate the 80% of activities that you do that are not contributing to your productivity. In that case, you can free up some time and energy for the things that actually do matter to you. And when you follow this rule honestly, you will see your creativity improves, your stress levels will decrease, and your love for your work will also increase. And in a few minutes, I'm actually going to share another personal story, of how I implemented the 80-20 rule to a really significant effect. So I put myself to the test on this webinar. One exciting thing about this phase, the elimination phase, is there is a correlation between the notion of removing things from your life and corresponding benefits. So we're all looking for ways to be more creative. We often marvel at the wonderful imaginative things that children do or that they say. And they do this precisely because they are unburdened. But as we grow older, life seems to weigh us down, and every one of those weights crushes our ability to flourish creatively. So if you can shed some of that weight, we allow more opportunities for creativity. It's also no mystery to me that we reduce our stress by eliminating responsibilities. So if you are stressed, I'd like you to think about what measures you use to mitigate it. I also believe, and it's taken me a lifetime to figure this out, but a lot of the stress that we carry on ourselves is actually unfounded. It's about our perception of the situation. So other people, as you can see, can handle stress very differently, but it's actually not that the stress is necessarily different, but it's the way they manage their stress, the way they deal it, the way they see that stress. So maybe you feel you have to manage the burden alone, but when possible, I do urge you, please share your stress, to talk about it with someone. Very often, even just eliminating a portion of the burden, or even just talking about that, is enough. And not everything has to be 100% eliminated. Sharing isn't always about sharing positive things. Sometimes we also need to share some of the stressful things. And lastly, I do want to reiterate the notion of job satisfaction. When we do the things we love, we tend to do them well. Eliminating unnecessary things opens us to the opportunity to do more of what we love. And we enter a feedback loop, which leads to job satisfaction. I don't know if any of you are parents and you have small children who just, you want them to eat their vegetables and they're just refusing to eat them. You have to do things that change how they see that vegetable, not as something that you're making them eat, but something that's actually enjoyable for them to want to eat. And I guess that's something similar to what I'm basically getting at here. Okay, again, if you've ever heard me talk before, you know I very often refer to the notion of leverage. And we have a number of levers that are available to us. They're in our personal lives, but they're also in our businesses. But the one ubiquitous lever every firm can deploy is using smart technologies in your firm's operations. So I think every one of you is intimately familiar with the benefits of CAD and BIM software, helping you design, and produce the deliverables. The most efficient and profitable firms, they've really invested money, and more importantly, they've invested time, and they do that through training to exploit these tools. They do it brilliantly, and they reap the rewards of that technology. But design and production are just one slice of the pie that comprises your firm. There are similarly brilliant technologies to leverage for project management, accounting, time and billing and human resources, client relationship management. I have spoken endlessly on these topics, and I remind you, invest the money and the time to leverage these tools. So they not only aid in efficiency and profitability, but they will allow you to minimize your workload while at the same time will provide you with more clarity about your business and your projects so that you make faster and smarter decisions. In addition, when you have the right technology, everybody on your team can see what is required for success. So task management should be a staple in every firm where everybody on the team understands what are their responsibilities and they can see the problems occurring in real time. Now, I'm going to kind of go off script maybe a little bit here and mention an aspect of technology that I wish every firm would adopt. I am speaking about transparency. And when dealing with businesses and project software applications, they typically all provide some security settings that give firm owners or the administrators control over which data is being shared with which members of the team. I am always impressed with the firms that have the greatest transparency. There is an absolute correlation that shows those firms perform highest on nearly all KPIs, key performance indicators. They have the greatest employee retention and employee satisfaction. They have the highest profitability and client satisfaction ratings. This is why I am a huge proponent of firms that use technology like that being provided by today's sponsor to open your staff's permissions to see deep into the business and the project performance and feel like they are respected team members. If any of you want to challenge this notion, please type in a question and I'll be happy to answer that at the end. So let's return to this current theme of eliminating unessential and undesirable work from your plate so you can free up some time and make space for the things that matter. So the first thing you need to understand is, how do you spend your time? That is also a reason why I have always strongly advocated keeping a very detailed time card with a granular list of activities. Once you have a very clear picture of your time, how you spend your day, you can start to eliminate tasks and activities that do not align with your goals or are simply unproductive. You're soon going to realize that you would have been just fine not even engaging in these unproductive tasks. So it begs the question, what does unproductive mean? And I look at everything as a matter of a return on investment. It's another reason technologies become important. When you track your time with the right technology, with the right software, you know not only how much it costs, but you can track that effort to see you if it brought you any returns. So let's just say, as an example, you spend 40 hours in the first quarter of this year working on updating your firm's website. Of course, there's going to be some other costs related to that effort, but I'm only interested in your time. Now, in addition, let's just say every hour of your time costs $100 an hour. That's making my math easy. So you spend 40 hours, that's $4,000, and you spent that money in the first quarter of this year. Now let's take a look at your website analytics. Has there been an uptick of visitors, and are they visiting the pages that you had been working on? Has there been an uptick in the request for proposals or any change in your prospect or client behavior that can be attributed to the 40 hours and the $4,000 that you invested? I will say that in most cases, not always, but in most cases, the answer is going to be no. So let's just give it another quarter while some social media efforts that you've been doing can have an impact. But if at the end of those 2 quarters, the answer is still no, you have to consider this was unproductive work. You thought it was essential. You all got together, you and your partners, and you looked at your website. You said it needs a refresh, or we really need to do this or that. So who's going to, put the time in to make that happen? And you do it. But was there actually a return on that investment? You thought it was essential. It turns out it wasn't. This is not always true, by the way. I'm just saying, on average, this is what I see. Another aspect of elimination is learning to say no to commitments or requests that do not serve your primary objectives. Now, of course, in business, you first look to your firm's mission and your vision, your goals. But when things start tugging at your sleeves for your attention that do not align with these, don't waste your time. Let them go. And I look forward to receiving your thank you notes for that one piece of advice. Perhaps the last thing I need to talk about concerning this process of elimination is you need to be better at delegation. Delegating tasks, when you do them correctly, will benefit both parties. Employees for whom you delegate work welcome the trust you place in them, and it is especially true when the work you are asking them to do pushes them beyond their current skills. These help build relationships, and it contributes to your staff's retention. But of course, you have to carefully consider who to delegate your work to, because it can also backfire when assigned to the wrong employees. The other benefit will come to you. You have lightened your load, taking a task that isn't serving your goals, and you're freeing up time for you to replace it with something that does. So it should be a win-win. Tim actually tells a story about a man. I don't think it's in his book, but I think I heard it in a podcast that he was on. He talked about a man he met who talked about spending his day mowing the lawn. I suppose he owned a pretty substantial property, because it would take me about 30 minutes if I ever felt it was a good use of my time. Anyway, Tim speculated, hey, you could have hired a teenager to cut your lawn and it would cost you $50. But the guy spent many, many hours on it. So the bottom line here is really, what is your time worth? Fine. But what actually constitutes work to you? My guess is that this business owner Tim was talking to relished the time he cut the grass. It took him out of his business, gave him an opportunity to think about things that he doesn't get to do. Some of you have that experience maybe when you're taking a shower or going to bed at night and your mind is finally free from the normal stresses of the day. And I think maybe this executive found cutting the lawn as that particular opportunity. Now that leads us to our third area in Tim's framework, which is to help you design a more efficient and a fulfilling work life. And that's going to be this thing of automation. For me, this is where technology again enters the picture. So unlike the time tracking that I just talked about a moment ago, which will help us get a high resolution image of our past, right? Understanding where do we spend our time, what are we doing? Automation technology creates a better future. So when we think about automation, we discuss leveraging technology and systems to handle repetitive and time-consuming tasks, often mundane tasks. In other words, processes that can be run on autopilot, reducing the need for constant human intervention. Now, Tim emphasizes the importance of outsourcing or delegating tasks to virtual assistants or automation tools. And I think at the time he wrote this 17 years ago, we were not even close to the kind of automation tools that we have available to us for very little expense today. I would love to hear him talk about that topic again, now that we finally have realized the technology that he could only dream about 17 years ago. So when we talk about automation, you have two primary concerns. Identify which of the tasks can be automated or outsourced, and then implement tools and software to streamline those operations. Now, Tim actually talks about delegating responsibilities to others as part of automation, but I really consider that part of the elimination framework. So I spoke about it in the previous slides. I'm really much of a purist when it comes to automation, simply because you delegate work to another person. It doesn't guarantee that you can rely on that individual to execute the job to your satisfaction. As a technologist, when I refer to automation, it is a 100% technology-based system, and I can rely 100% on those results. So let's first consider how we identify tasks that can be automated. It is a green field or maybe a blue sky exercise for most firms. And I can genuinely talk about this topic for hours because I personally believe nearly everything we do has automation potential. And as we get more and more AI tools available to us today, it becomes frighteningly obvious that this is the case. So I'm going to talk about some scheduled or automated reporting. And having worked, again, with over 1,400 firm owners personally over the past couple of decades, I can tell you there is a colossal amount of time that you waste creating reports. 95% of all reports are easily automated. They just involve a regular data review for analysis and decision making. A lot of firm leaders shrug off this effort because it's very often the burden of an overhead employee. Efficiency usually becomes essential when a technical employee's utilization rates are at risk. However, if non-technical employees are being inefficient, a lot of firm leaders just are not troubled by it. Consider the difference it would make to your bottom line if you could reduce overhead tasks and free the admin staff to focus their efforts on actual overhead work that contributes to your bottom line, like marketing. When I work with my clients, report automation is the lowest hanging fruit, yielding the greatest results. When I think about leverage, we might see a one-time, maybe 5-minute investment, and it'll pay dividends for years. So suppose your firm prepares 3 different reports biweekly and maybe another 3 kinds of reports monthly. And every one of those reports, on the best of circumstances, requires only 1 hour for somebody to gather the information and then prepare it in some sort of manner for visualization as a report. So that is going to be 9 man-hours each month. Automating that process, 100% taking it off the hands of those people that have to do that work, means your firm is going to save 108 hours, which is a 2.5 man week. So imagine, what could you do with 12 extra days given to your firm? Next area where I find firms to be very inefficient concerns how they do their invoicing. The time they spend every month to calculate and generate invoices is sobering. And again, when you have the right technology, you can schedule the invoicing cadence for every one of your projects and have the software evaluate what is the contract value, what's the work in progress, what's our earned value, and generate invoices automatically. And once they're prepared, the system can notify the appropriate reviewer for their approval, after which the invoice is automatically emailed to the client. And we analyze the impact of automating your invoicing. And we determined that what used to take a typical firm 3 man days, that's 24 hours, it was reduced to 3 hours. So that saves 252 hours a year. That's more than 6 man weeks. I'm going to move to an adjacent task like accounting and bookkeeping. Most small firms will spend somewhere between 8 and 16 hours a month dealing with their accounting services. And they'll have bookkeepers or they'll outsource it somehow. When you implement smart accounting software and electronic invoicing and electronic payments, you can reduce this from 8 and 16 hours, you can reduce that down to about 2 to 4 hours a month. That's a savings somewhere between 48 and 144 hours every year. So if you're keeping score, these 3 automation technologies alone can save your firm 12 man weeks. And let's just assume, which it's not, that they're all just an overhead employee. And to make the math easy for me, that's $25 an hour cost to your firm. You will have saved $12,000. But I guess I'm digressing because we're not talking about the money today. But let's just focus on the time. That's 400 or 500 hours saved. About 20 to 25% of a full-time employee's time is saved in a year by implementing automation for just 3 things. The list can actually go on. So what you do, you stop, you stand back, you look at your life, you look at your business, you think about what is happening manually, what is sucking up your valuable time that could be offloaded to technology. Do your research, find the right tools that are out there. There's many of them. If you have any difficulty seeing what are those opportunities, please contact me after the webinar. I will be happy to help you work through those. So even though I did talk about delegation during that elimination stage, remember I do have told you the difference between how Tim feels about it and how I feel about automation. I do want to return to it briefly because Ferris does include it in the automation process. Still, it is one of the functions, delegation, that is essential for leadership. So we all believe we can do the work better than anyone else, and we want it done right. This is what causes us to hesitate when we should delegate. We think maybe that person's going to need some extra hand-holding, they're going to need more oversight than it's worth, so we just buckle down and we do the work ourselves. As a firm leader, you cannot continue thinking this way. Frankly, you should get to the point where everybody on your team is better than you. Considering your job is secure, you should not be threatened by that notion. It is precisely the qualifications of your team that creates so much value in your firm. So bring them to the table and let them eat. They will grow and they will be grateful. The exercise that you're going to need to do is look at everybody on your team, define their strengths and their weaknesses. You will exploit their strengths and you will mentor them or coach them to minimize their weaknesses. And suppose that is all you take away from today's webinar is this concept. I feel time was well spent here. So, as with most things, one's perspective of any situation can lead to different feelings and results. I talked about that earlier. It's going to be vital for you to not only delegate work, but also empower others to take ownership of those tasks. When you empower people, they take greater pride in their work. It brings them more joy. So be very thoughtful when you present tasks to your staff so that they appreciate their importance in the project's overall success, how you rely on them, and that you know that they can do a great job. Without that, I can promise you that you will be forced to pick up the pieces or you're going to have to fill in the gaps. When possible, please include these younger team members in important meetings and spotlight them when the fruits of their efforts are being discussed. Now, earlier I talked about the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, and I promised you I would make you suffer through a personal experience I've had implementing that. So I have prepared about 70 presentations like this one over the last 16 years. As you know, I track my time with great detail. And I can tell you, on average, each one of my presentations will take me about 40 hours to create. About a quarter of my time, about 10 hours, I spend developing and researching the general topic and what are going to be the learning points. I write a detailed essay on the subject as part of that process. Then I would start creating a PowerPoint presentation based on the full vision of what I think I'm going to be presenting. And I often use this time to even reconsider the aesthetics of my presentation, as I'm always looking to improve. And sometimes my previous templates could use, benefit from these little iterations. So The labor to design and build the slide deck, like the one you're looking at today, will consume about half of my total time. I would sweat the details. uh what's the transition going to be like, what's the text spacing, all of those little nuances of every slide image. But the last quarter or the last 10 hours of my time is spent building a 10 question quiz and then writing a blog article and maybe doing some rehearsals of my presentation. All of that stuff combined is a 40 hours. So as an exercise in practicing what I preach, I deployed technology to automate, simplify, and or in no small part, create today's webinar. Now, hopefully all of you are noodling around with the various AI tools that have been rolling out over the last year plus. While a lot of it is still in its experimental stage, they do bring extraordinary value. So that is what I did for today's webinar. I leveraged 3 different AI tools: ChatGPT, which I use every single day, Midjourney, and Prezi. And later, when the post-webinar survey comes out, you can judge for yourself if that was a smart decision on my part. Because if I see the audience was dissatisfied, I know I probably outsourced more to technology than I should have. So rather than start from scratch, building each of the 30 to 40 slides that I usually require, I signed up for a trial account on Prezi, don't tell them, and I created a 158-word prompt that I used because they had been touting they had some built-in AI that I wanted to see really what does it do. Anyway, it ended up generating 24 slides. It did it in less than 2 minutes. I downloaded the deck. I imported it into PowerPoint. I spent another hour replacing the stock photography that came with it, which I don't like. And I created my own AI images using Midjourney, which is one of the images you're looking at right now. Now, I also created some screenshots using, thank you to BQ, I used our sponsor's project and business management software as on half of the slides that you're looking at today. And in addition, I used, as I do every day, ChatGPT to help flesh out some concepts, improve or expand on my thoughts, open up my eyes to different notions about this. But when I was all done, I done my detailed essay. I used it to create a 10-question multiple choice quiz. I just took my essay, uploaded it into chat, and said, create a 20-question quiz, from which I culled only half of them. So if you're watching this not live, you're probably going to see that 10-question quiz. Thank you, ChatGPT, for that. Also helped it review and improve my blog article. Anyway, by the end of the process, I reduced all of my time invested in this presentation from 40 hours to 7.5 hours. In less than 1 workday, I had the final PowerPoint completed. I had done a dry run rehearsal. I had created that 10-question quiz. I wrote a 1,600-word blog article, and usually all of that would take me 1 full week. And interestingly enough, 40 hours reduced to 7.5 means I freed up over 80% of my time by embracing the latest technologies, but not abdicating my responsibilities to have pride of ownership or authorship. I was still in control. I'm giving it my own spin, I think, as you can tell. And then maybe I can invest another hour or two refining some of my talking points. But I think this is scary good. It's not perfect, but contrary to what my wife might think, neither am I. When you consider the 80-20 rule, you have to be very cognizant of what are high impact tasks. So if you are, like most architects I know, and like me, you have to-do lists. They can be quite long. People might create a hierarchy of tasks, listing them sort of in an impactful order, especially when they're related to a project. For example, I might have a task like do a zoning and code analysis, and that's critical to complete before I start working on the plans, sections, and elevations, because maybe I don't know what the site setbacks are, or the height restrictions, or the allowable floor area. So you got to get some things done before other things can begin. So when you do this, you're actually doing it, you're on the right track. But of course, Again, technology can make that so much easier because when you allocate tasks to your teammates, they will see them appear instantly in their to-do list. They'll also be visible in a Gantt chart, which brings that workload of all those tasks into a different dimension where time now plays a critical role. Once again, delegate tasks like a leader, allocate the work so your team is inspired and challenged. Now, Tim's final phase is liberation, the freedom to live and work on your terms. This can only happen if you can break free from a traditional 9 to 5 work structure and create a flexible lifestyle that allows you to work from anywhere and at times that are convenient for you. Liberation focuses on designing your work schedule to maximize flexibility and efficiency. So have you figured out how to work asynchronously with your team? Or do you still need to be physically present in your office? How productive are you while you're in the office? How much time is spent commuting? And are you doing anything practical during that? Please explore opportunities for remote work, or maybe even establishing a location-independent business if you are genuinely expecting to achieve this kind of a lifestyle. And frankly, when I think about the impacts of COVID-19, this is the one bright light I see. We needed to become flexible with remote work. And I know there is a recent trend to bring your teams back into the office, but I would still encourage you to find ways to make remote work a part of the culture. The world is headed in that direction. And as long as you fight against it, you will also be fighting against the thesis that we're talking about here today. It is inevitable. So why aren't we a pioneer in making it work? Tim actually recommends embracing a lifestyle that prioritizes experiences and personal fulfillment over material wealth. So what will you do once you reach the point where Maslow's hierarchy of needs has been met? Hopefully you don't just simply go idle and live like life is a perpetual spring break or just playing 2 rounds of golf each day. When you get to this point in life, I hope you are comfortable enough to go outside of the, it's about me perspective and focus on things beyond you, even beyond your family, where you can likewise leave a legacy. So what's that legacy going to be? And if you don't think about it now, you're going to be like a lot of people who reach retirement age and realize they've got nothing to fill the void when there is no longer a job to go to each day. You might be able to impact education or focus on research projects that always intrigued you, but you just never had the time. Maybe you want to dip your toe into politics or get active with environmental change or directly work within your community. Having a purpose-driven life is more important than any one project you will ever have the good fortune to design. And that leads us to why you should put all of this effort into simplifying and maximizing your life to make your life more meaningful and valuable. The fundamental element that allows that to happen is time. So let's all work to free up time and align our lives with our professional and our personal goals. Will you have a void left behind you as you become ultimately efficient, or will you actually have been able to fill that with something really meaningful? So last thing I'm going to mention is if you do expect to see change to achieve a better work-life balance or even have that 4-hour work week, you must start measuring progress. Every goal can be turned into a KPI. When you see your goals translated into data, you can make your changes accordingly. And if all you have are these good intentions and you have no way to measure your progress, I can guarantee you will never achieve your goals. Okay, so before we get to the Q&A, and I think, Courtney, you're going to be asking those questions, and hopefully they're coming in. But